evening. Welcome to Solution or Faith Movement, hosted by Marty Braxton and Bishop Dwayne Royster. This is Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of Power, the state of Pennsylvania's largest multi-faith, multi-race-based organizing movement with 120 congregations of multiple faith traditions in 10 counties across the state. With me is Amadi Braxton, activist, documentarian, philanthropist, counselor, coach, and consultant. Ms. Braxton, how are you this evening?
I am doing okay.
I got you. You seem mellow today. I just want to note that.
Yes, I'm feeling mellow. I think it's been a rough week coming off of the shootings last weekend and everything that's going on.
I hear you. Each week we come to you on Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. to bring you the organizers, movement and thought leaders, elected officials, and community members who are creating solutions to the issues that impact your life on the local, state, national, and international levels. On the board tonight is engineer extraordinaire Troy Wilmore, who is capably producing and engineering the show.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
Yes, and Troy is working on scaring everybody. All right. Tonight, you are our primary guest, and so we want to invite you to join in the conversation. Feel free to call 215-634-8065. Again, 215-634-8065 or 1-866-361-0900. You can also listen online at www.wordradio.com. You can find us live on the app. You can also find us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. You can also find us live by saying, Alexa, turn on WURD Radio. And Alexa will turn on WURD Radio for you so that you can join us as well. Feel free to engage us. And again, you can also give us a call if you want to engage in the conversation, 215-634-8065. All right, Ms. Braxton, what is on your mind?
One of the victims of the shooting on 60th Street over last weekend is a distant cousin of mine, and it's had an impact on members of my extended family. And I feel like, this particular case just made me think about just how out of control this gun violence situation is, and had me really grappling for answers about what is the solution. I mean, I know that there's a number of ways that we need to come at this, but to me, the primary way is getting access to these kinds of weapons of war off the streets, getting access to these kinds of guns and weaponry, cutting off access to it, making it much harder than it apparently is for people to get their hands on that kind of weaponry. So that's what I've been kind of grappling with all week. And I've also been thinking about the fact that, so this person that I'm referring to is Sakar Johnson, who was the owner he's a fashion designer, entrepreneur, owner of a clothing store, helped sponsor the event that was happening for the community. That was a July 4th celebration. And he is cousins of my cousins on their father's side. And just knowing the impact that it's having on them. And I think about, and they're not immediate family, but if you think about the layers of trauma and pain that reverberates out from the loss of one life, or even the wounding of one life. There have been 3,200 shooting victims in the past year in this city. Not people who've died from the shootings, but who have been wounded and or died. And if you say 10 people in their circle were impacted, I'm sure it's actually quite larger than that. But if you're conservative and you say 10 people for each of those shootings has been profoundly impacted. That's 32,000 people in this city that are feeling the reverberations of that trauma, let alone the victim themselves. But that is the kind of impact we're talking about in this city. And how are we going to continue to let this occur, where we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people of, one particular racial community being impacted and traumatized in this way? It's unacceptable.
So let me ask you a question. So I want to flip the script a little bit on you, right? Because you're a leader in our community. You actually consult with and influence a lot of nonprofit work that goes on in and around Philadelphia. You know a lot of folk. I mean, a lot of times on the show, we're actually talking to other people, asking about solutions. Periodically we go on our rants about various things. But as you've been contemplating and wrestling with this over the last, few days, what do you see as a solution?
I've had a range of thoughts, from fantasies of having thousands of Black Philadelphians going to Harrisburg and doing a die-in in the state capitol with people wearing pictures of the dead and wounded, to bring home the impact that this is having, because the state legislature has allowed laws to be passed, it has passed laws that allow the proliferation of guns in our community, to, looking at all of the things we can do in our school. We have to fund our schools so that they can provide the kind of support and education that our children need, that makes them feel like they belong and want to be in school and be nurtured and be made to feel like they matter. There's all sorts of support and programs that are needed for parents to be able to better know how to support their children and to be able to better support the parents. Parents need to be paid a living wage. Youth need jobs so that they don't feel like they need to go out on the streets and engage in, criminal activity. People who have been traumatized need support to heal from that. Street interventions need to happen. Mediation programs need to happen. I mean, there's lots and lots of layers to this. But the fact is that there is intergenerational poverty, trauma, and problems, and it has been ignored by the powers that be in this city for too long, and it has led us to where we are. So yeah. I've been thinking about it on all sorts of levels. I think we need an all hands on deck approach. But the number one thing is, having enough political power to actually make some real change and interventions here. So, and I know that there are a lot of programs going on. There are, a lot of, scientifically proven things, but they're underfunded and they're not being coordinated across all disciplines in the city.
Right.
As far as I know.
I mean, one of the things, Black Clergy of Philadelphia some months ago came out and we're pushing a plan for $100 million to put towards gun violence prevention here in the city of Philadelphia. In the latest budget, there was some money, not $100 million, and a lot of the programs are going back to fund programs that already exist, which, like you said, are already underfunded anyway and aren't able to actually bring about the real transition and change. I guess, part of this for me is gun violence is about guns, and it's also way beyond guns at the same time. So some years ago, I was actually chair of the board of Heeding God's Call, which was a gun violence prevention program then in a ministry of local churches here in Philadelphia that were really working on trying to end straw purchases at gun shops in the city of Philadelphia. Interesting for most people to know is that New Jersey's gun problem stems from Philadelphia. Because people will come over here because of the way the state of Pennsylvania gun laws are set up. They would go to gun shops, and the particular gun shop that we managed to get closed down was Coliseumos, which was on Spring Garden Street, used to be right across the street, right down the street from the FOP headquarters. And folk would go in there, guys would go in there with their girlfriends, they would go in there, buy 10 guns, and then all of a sudden those guns would disappear and they would turn up in some other events because people were selling them out of the trunk of their car to anybody who, was the highest bidder that could pay them for the various guns. And unfortunately, a lot of young women got locked up because technically those guns were in their name. And so they wound up on the street. They were not reported to the police as stolen. And it created a whole secondary problem of incarceration for young women that were in there buying guns for folk that really had no right, sometimes because of their conviction history of being able to own guns in the city. Mm-hmm. So there's an issue about straw purchases. New Jersey State Police and others have complained for years because people will come over to Pennsylvania, buy guns, and then, they'll get people from Philadelphia to go over to Jersey and sell those guns out of their trunk. And continue to put guns on the street in Jersey as well. So there's a problem.
Same thing with Chicago with, people bringing in guns from Indiana, which has very lax laws, into Illinois, which has stricter laws. But, that's how they get around it. Go ahead and continue.
No, so the other piece was years ago, it was very difficult to get a concealed carry permit in the city of Philadelphia. And then the state sued Philadelphia, wound up going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that you can't create separate laws for Philadelphia with regard to people carrying guns, which was a whole nother challenge that took place as well, because it then did not give the city of Philadelphia any autonomy or control over the guns that were on the street in the city of Philadelphia. And I think that that's part of what we have to get back to is Philadelphia has got to have some autonomy around its own city. I'll go a little bit further and say that one of the challenges that we have in Philadelphia that's also facing this is the economic conditions. And the fact of the matter is Philadelphia is probably the most expensive place to live in the state of Pennsylvania right now, except maybe the suburban counties right around Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have money to live, you're struggling, you're catching up side hustles, and you're doing other things to be able to try to make your money, or because sometimes the only job you can get are minimum wage jobs that do not support families, do not, do anything. And that creates a problem. The other challenge, and a lot of people won't really address this, but I'm going to talk about it outright, is that the legalization of marijuana and the inability of people who are running their side hustles to be able to work that on the street anymore is having a direct impact on the economic conditions of those that were former street pharmaceutical agents. And so there's impact on that as well, because the very people who have been convicted prior or who had been dealing or, selling marijuana are now unable to get into the legalized medical marijuana side because of their previous convictions, which is a ridiculous law to have in the first place. You can't legalize marijuana and then tell everybody that ever dealt marijuana or got thrown in jail because they had marijuana on them that they now can't participate in the industry. That doesn't make any sense. It's hypocritical at best. These decisions are being made by people outside of Philadelphia who are trying to control the destiny of Philadelphia. Most of those folk don't look like most Philadelphians. It's time for Philadelphia to consider seceding from the state of Pennsylvania if Pennsylvania is trying to do everything that it can to hurt us. We're up on our first break. I'll let that one marinate there for a few minutes. We will continue this conversation when we get back. You can also know that you can give us a call. We'd love to get into a deeper conversation with you all about this, 215-634-8065. This is Solutions on WURD with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio. Watch for a disabled vehicle on the Vine Expressway this afternoon, westbound side between the Parkway and the Schuylkill. The center lane is blocked. Delays going back to 8th Street. Meantime, volume on the Vine eastbound, 76 to 95. Schuylkill Expressway, heavy volume eastbound Boulevard to the Vine. Westbound, we back up between Bear Avenue and the Vine, also between Girard Avenue and Belmont Avenue. 95 northbound is heavy, Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street. Southbound, we back up through the construction. Cottman to Bridge, also further south in Delco, we're backing up Ridley Park to Highland Avenue. The boulevard slows down northbound Schuylkill to Broad Street. And we got delays in Marlton, New Jersey, 7 eastbound Radnor Boulevard to Elmwood Road. Report brought to you by America's Best Contacts and Eyeglasses. Don't overpay for glasses. Get 2 pairs and a free exam for just $69.95. The exam alone is worth $50. That's not just a better deal, it's America's Best. Book your exam online today. In certain states, eye exams provided by independent ophthalmologists. See stores for details. And for more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to wordradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions on WURD. Hey, WURD family, are you looking for a job? WURD has you covered. We just launched a brand new job portal featuring jobs from some of Philadelphia's leading companies and arts organizations. If you go to the portal right now, you'll see jobs from WURD Radio, the Kimmel Center, Her Foods, Always Best Care, and more. Apply for a job today. Go to our livelihood website at wordworks.com. That's WURDworks.com and click jobs. Matter of fact, I think Power's got some jobs we want to add to that website too. So we'll be reaching out to make sure that we get connected and let our WURD listeners know that there's plenty of opportunities that are out there. So helpful to help to get folk back into the workforce, get their economic situation stable, and keep them moving forward. All right, so I just dropped one of my radical notions and ideas right before we went to break of, Philadelphia seceding from the rest of the state since the rest of Pennsylvania seems to hate us. Your thoughts on
that? It's a provocative idea. They would never let that happen. The state would never let that happen because Philadelphia taxes contribute probably the majority of the state budget. Yeah. Aside from any recent federal monies from the CARE Act and all that kind of stuff. I like it as a provocative concept. And I think it forces us to, that idea forces us to think about just what we do contribute to the welfare of the state and the benefit of the state. You know, in the state house, which is dominated by white Republicans, we're viewed as, Philadelphia is viewed as, this majority black city that is, riddled with problems,
You're being so kind. That's so gentle the way you said that. That's so gentle. That's not how they view us.
I don't want to curse on the radio or use the N-word or whatever. But, right. But the reality is that we we fund a lot of the poorer states the poorer counties in the Commonwealth probably, and we and as a state, we subsidize states in the South who have lower tax base to contribute to the federal government too. So I don't know. Interesting idea.
Well, let's see what our listeners are thinking, and just remind folk the phone lines are open 215-634-8065. We're going to go to Maurice from Southwest. Maurice, welcome to Solutions on Word.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
All right.
No disrespect, but you guys have no idea what you're talking about. Reverend, when was the last time you went to a gun shop?
When was the last time I went to a gun shop?
Buy a gun.
I was in a gun shop, I don't know, not too long, a couple months ago.
In Philadelphia?
No, it wasn't in Philly.
All right, then you need to stop saying what you're saying. It is very difficult in Philadelphia to buy a gun. First of all, when you go in there, you got to do a background check. And if you fail the background check, it's a $200 fine.
Right, but that's why a lot of women were being brought in by their boyfriends because they could pass the background check to be able to buy the guns. That's how the whole straw purchase thing worked.
That straw purchase thing is over with. The shop owners, because I've been to every gun shop here in Philadelphia, are very suspicious unless you can show that that's your wife or something like that. They are very wary to sell a gun to a couple. That's why a lot of times they only let one person in at a time.
Well, that could very well be the case, but if you also know what you're looking for, you can send somebody in to go buy what you want, and there's no limit to the amount of guns you can buy in Pennsylvania at any one time.
Well, I don't know about that because I tried to buy 3 guns and they told me no. And I'm a gun lover. I'm an NRI member.
But Maurice, my question is, Maurice, just on that point, my question is, I mean, most crimes that we're talking about are committed by illegal guns bought illegally, not at gun shops.
They're not brought to Philadelphia. So you hurting legal gun owners. These guys, these guns are shooting up people with, they didn't go in the store and buy these guns. You know, you can go right outside the border of Philadelphia. I live in Southwest. I can go over to Yaden, Darby, Holmes, Lansdowne, and buy a gun. I don't have to buy them from Philadelphia.
Right, but I mean, here's the thing. We're talking about straw purchases. So they're bought in gun shops in Philly, or they can be bought in any gun shop in Pennsylvania. You're right about that. But then they are sold later out of the back of somebody's car. And so when we talk about, that's an illegal sale, right, because it's not being regulated by federal firearm laws. And so, or there's not a federal firearms licensed gun shop owner that's handling that in that particular moment. So this is part of the problem, right? You're right. They are not going, the people who are committing the crimes are not going into the gun shop. They're buying the guns from people that are selling them out of the back of their cars or selling them as they're walking down the street and they got it wrapped up in a newspaper or whatever as they're passing it off to somebody else. There's a whole underground economy for gun sales in the state of Pennsylvania. But at some point, somebody had to go in and buy that gun from a gun shop, whether it's a gun shop, whether they went to a sporting goods store, whether they went to, a big box store that sells guns. Somewhere along the line, somebody eventually bought a gun in a place that they were actually legally able to go and buy a gun and then chose to sell, or that gun was stolen or whatever means, whether it was a straw purchase or not. That gun was sold to somebody that was not in a gun shop. It was sold secretly, clandestinely from folk that should not have been selling them that gun.
Reverend, the second point, you guys keep saying it's a gun problem. It is not a gun problem.
I didn't say it was a gun problem. We did not say that.
It's a black-on-black problem. The only people getting killed is black people.
I disagree with you on that, Maurice, because white folk are killing white folk too. I mean, we don't talk about that, and most crime is done race on race. So for us to say it's black on black, we don't talk about white on white crime. We don't talk about Asian on Asian crime. We don't talk about Latinx on Latinx crime. So to say it's just a black thing is really erroneous in its orientation because 86% of all crimes are committed intra-race, not inter-race.
People killing black women, children, they do not care who's out there. Why are we in such a desperate state that our youth and our young men, some women, are shooting other black people? That is the problem. Is it either because they don't have a job, either because they can't find housing, is it because our public officials are not doing their job? It's a whole factor of things, but the politicians like to tell us it's a gun problem, so we don't ask them what are they not doing. That's all I'm saying.
Right. It's a both and, Maurice. It's not an either or. And I would affirm that, right? It's bigger than just guns, but it's also about the issue of availability of guns on the street, whether they're legal or illegal, that has a problem, which is why I've often been critical of gun buyback programs. Because I'm like, okay, you get a few guns off the street. There are millions of guns floating around Philadelphia right now. There are people with arsenals in their homes. And that, there's probably more than enough gun for every person in the city of Philadelphia to have a gun still, even with all the buyback programs and everything that we have going on. Maurice, we appreciate you calling in. It's always good to get in a good debate with you about what's happening in the area.
The other thing I just want to say, I know we have another caller on the line, but I just want to say quickly that it is a gun problem. Because if there wasn't a gun, people would act out their anger and despair and what have you, whatever they're feeling that makes them want to go act criminally. They would be fighting each other with fists or with some other less lethal weapon. Mm-hmm. So it's the guns that are leading to the rate of deaths that we have. I mean, that's just common sense. I understand the larger point, Maurice, you're making about there's all these other issues like the politicians not doing their jobs, the socioeconomic circumstances that people are facing that lead them to despair or engaging in types of behavior. But the gun is the lethal ingredient to the equation. So I just had to say that.
That's all right. Great. Thank you. And let's go to Michael in Abington. Michael, welcome to Solution on WURD.
Hi, how you doing? I think I have a solution that you guys could do. By the way, good show, and I agreed with a lot of what your last caller said. First of all, I just want to jump on and off something real quick about Philadelphia seceding from whatever union. Philadelphia in the 1970s, we paid for our school taxes about 89% of our school within Philadelphia for Philadelphia. Today we pay about 12%. This city is bleeding money, and there is no way in God's name we pay for the rest of the state. That's a total falsehood. Look at the numbers. This city is a complete money down the rat hole. I'm going to say that. I'm going to leave it. But for a minute, we're going to go to guns. Less than a fraction of 1% of legal gun owners today create crime. In Switzerland, the heaviest armed country in the world, when you get out of the service, everybody does service, they get a fully automatic weapon. In every house is a fully automatic weapon. They have no murders in Switzerland. In this country, right after the Depression, the average household had a gun, more than today. There was despair everywhere. The cities were contracted into no suburbs. You know how many murders happened right after the Depression in this city? 30. And I'm going to tell you what the problem is, and I think this is where you can help. Bring in the young people onto your shows on WURD Radio, because all you basically have is old heads like me. Okay, you have old heads who are basically established in life. We have our brains glued on straight. You're not hearing from the problem. Bring these children right off the streets onto your radio show, and I'm going to be painfully honest with you. You're going to see a brain-dead, zombified group of people who are going to frighten.
Michael, I have to stop you because that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. Matter of fact, some of the most brilliant people in our city right now are young folk, Gen Z, Gen X folk, Gen millennial folk that are coming up with some imaginative, creative solutions to the things that are happening in our city and trying to find ways to push back against the collective oppression that has been forced upon their communities for generations. So I have to totally disagree with you about everything that you're saying. And to be quite frank, in every community in the city of Philadelphia, whatever racial group, whatever economic group, whatever there are, there's always a percentage of folk that are deadbeats, that are no good, that are not productive, that are not productive people in society. But to say that for the average young person, and I mean, I think you're really trying to say black folk, right? On the streets, I just totally disagree with you. To be quite frank, that is like, the dog whistles all over the place, man. I hear where you're coming from and what you're trying to say, and I totally disagree with you. And, to be quite frank, it sounds just a little racist.
Can I say this? I'm not making up the numbers, and neither are you. We could sit here and say, you're placing what I'm saying as dog whistles or black and white, but the truth is that would be like you saying to me, Michael, let's both agree we're not anywhere near the numbers they're saying. We don't really have 600 and nearing. We're going to 600 murders this year. It's all false. It's all unicorns. It's not real. Let's just believe it's not real, my friend. It is real. They're out there killing each other. It's not all black. It has nothing to do with black and white. It has to do with young people who have no soul, no humanity. And you talk about young people talking to you as imaginative. There are young people. They're the good people that are going to make it. They're not the perps we're talking about. They're not the people you and I are talking about. Bring those people off the street that I'm talking about. Go out and find them. Bring them onto your show that have these feelings about violence and crime. Let them speak on your show. Let them speak openly. You will be frightened to death because I see them. And I'm telling you, there's nothing in their eyes. And that's why we have 600 murders, heading towards 600 murders. If you can make that go away, you win this argument.
I totally agree that there is a pervasive sense. Dr. Cornel West, who used to be of Harvard, used to be of Princeton, now of Union Theological Seminary, wrote a book called Prophesy Deliverance about the city of Philadelphia. He talked about the pervasive sense of nihilism that existed in Philadelphia, most of it caused by the deep oppression, economic oppression, housing oppression, health oppression, educational oppression that has existed in our city for a very long time. If there are young folk that are looking like zombies and seem like they have no souls, it is because those of us who propose to have souls and they're supposed to be leaders of the city have allowed them to get to that state. And so I think we have to take a hard look at our leadership. We have to take a hard look at the decisions that we're making. We have to take a hard look about how we're prioritizing communities that have been marginalized, dispossessed, disinherited in the city of Philadelphia, and we have to really begin to push back in a deep way on that. Michael, thanks for giving us a call on the show. Appreciate it. Your thoughts, Ms. Braxton?
Well, I mean, one of the things before Michael's call, I was going to raise the issue of, and we can get to this on the other side because I know we're up on our next break, but just raise the issue of like the spiritual crisis that a lot of this speaks to. Because, as we talk about the murder rate impacting the black community primarily in the city of Philadelphia, across the state of Pennsylvania and across the country, the top number of gun deaths is among white men within a certain age range by suicide. And so there's more suicides caused by guns among that group than there are of other kinds of killings by guns. So there is a spiritual crisis that's impacting different subsets of the national community in different ways. And it's manifesting in these different ways. So I'm curious to talk about that on the other side.
Awesome. Well, you're listening to Solutions on Word with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. We'll be right back.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Watch for a disabled vehicle on the Vine Expressway this afternoon, westbound side between the Parkway and the Schuylkill. The center lane is blocked. Delays going back to 8th Street. Meantime, volume on the Vine eastbound, 76 to 95. Schuylkill Expressway, heavy volume eastbound Boulevard to the Vine. Westbound, we back up between Bear Avenue and the Vine, also between Girard Avenue and Belmont Avenue. 95 northbound is heavy. Columbus Boulevard to Bridge Street. Southbound, we back up through the construction. Cotman to Bridge, also further south in Delco. We're backing up Ridley Park to Highland Avenue. The boulevard slows down northbound Schuylkill to Broad Street. And we got delays in Marlton, New Jersey, 7 eastbound Radnor Boulevard to Elmwood Road. Report brought to you by America's Best Contacts and Eyeglasses. Don't overpay for glasses. Get 2 pairs and a free exam for just $69.95. The exam alone is worth $50. That's not just a better deal, it's America's Best. Book your exam online today. In certain states, eye exams provided by independent ophthalmologists. See stores for details. And for more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Berger Montague is a Philadelphia-based plaintiffs' class action law firm committed to helping Philadelphia's black community. Berger Montague maintains a strong commitment to fostering diversity and equity throughout the legal community and in society in general. In 2020, Berger Montague filed a pro bono case against the IRS when they refused to send COVID-19 stimulus checks to federal benefits recipients with dependent children. Thanks to Berger Montague, people across the United States were able to obtain dependent benefit checks that they desperately needed. Berger Montague supports WURD Radio and Philadelphia's black community. For more information about Berger Montague Law Firm, please call 215-875-3033 or email at info@bm.net.
Tune in this Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Islam Today show with a perspective on moral guidance and Islamic principles and values.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions on WURD. This is Marty Braxton along with Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Yo.
So we have been talking about the gun violence situation. You know, during the break, I was just looking up the rate of suicides or the number of suicides in the state of Pennsylvania. The latest statistic I could find was I believe 2018. Mm-hmm. In 2018, there were a total of 1,896 suicides across the state of Pennsylvania. Wow. So that's quite a significant number. And I wonder how that would compare to combined gun deaths that were homicides across the state. Something interesting to look at. But we know nationally the statistic is that suicide is the highest rate of gun death is by suicide in the country. And again, the common denominator there is a level of despair and easy access to guns, whether they be, and perhaps in the case of the suicides, more of the guns are legally acquired. I don't know. But we know that in the case of criminal activity that results in homicide, that the vast majority of those weapons are gotten illegally. I think, there is some degree of truth to, I think what we are drawing out from what Michael was saying was just that there is a crisis of, I look at it as a spiritual crisis. And again, a crisis of despair. But there's also, there's also people who engage in stupid behavior and non-thinking behavior because they're young men. And a lot of young men engage in dumb things because their brains are developing. So that's another factor. I mean, there definitely is a toxic masculinity aspect to this as well.
Oh, absolutely. 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 I think that is that's a piece of this too, right? This is the bravado. It's the I'm going to show you mine's bigger than yours. I can do more damage than yours kind of thing that has to really be addressed in, you know, how we deal with each other and how men deal with each other in general. I would totally affirm that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was looking as I was like in my dreaming and fantasizing about how we could solve, how do we go about solving the gun crisis. I was looking at looking up research on different approaches to prevention or different strategies that have been proven effective. And there's so many, and you really need to use them all in combination with each other. There's not one solution.
Right, absolutely.
There was like, it's, part of it has to do with the way that you track information about, the guns that are being used. There are, there's street outreach programs that can be highly effective. There's focused deterrence programs where you really engage with the people that are most high risk for engaging in violence and do intensive work with those, with that set of people. There's hospital-based violence prevention or violence intervention programs where people who have been wounded in a gun violence incident, there's a case manager that comes in while they're in the hospital room recovering from that injury, that wound, to do intensive work with them to prevent them from, once they go back out after they've healed from that wound, to prevent them from retaliating or from engaging in, retaliatory patterns of violence. That can interrupt patterns of violence. There's, a lot of different things like coordinating, having much closer coordination between DAs and homicide units in police departments. There's even environmental design solutions where, the physical, setting up physical environments in a way that gets rid of blight and creates a better environment for people to live in can help them feel better about their lives and themselves. And that has been shown to impact levels of violence. So there's, interventions with domestic violence. I mean, there's a whole range of things that can be done. And we have to do them all. And we have to be willing to invest in them all. And I just don't think what has been named as like the amount of resources being set aside for this is just not nearly enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we got some callers on the line.
Okay.
And why don't we go to our friend Val from Maine. Val, welcome to Solutions on WURD.
Salutations, Bishop.
How you doing?
Good. You should come visit sometime.
I love Maine. I've been up there a couple times, but I was there on business. I flew in and flew back out, but I will get up there at some point.
Well, you should come play. You can go fishing. I don't like to fish.
Oh, okay. That's fine. There's pretty lakes up there and oceans right there, too, so absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm calling to say it's all of the things. First of all, I want to respond to Michael when he was talking about, I forgot what country he mentioned in Europe.
Switzerland.
Switzerland. But the thing of it is, Swiss have health care. Swiss have, each male and female have maternity leave of up to 6 months a year. There's a certain standard of living, you know what I mean? Things are removed from people of color's existence in this country. So this is a class factor. I mean, it's not just race, it's a class thing too. And as we can see right now with the assault on the suppression of voter rights there's some group in this country that does not want black and brown and actually poor whites to achieve because they benefit. So it's a huge picture. And I agree with Braxton that we have to deal with it on multitude levels. But we have to really step back. We have to step back and look at the mosaic of what is happening, because it's happening in different levels. But there are forces that are actively trying to create and continue this situation. The country operates on the suppression of people of color and live off of their sweat equity. Black, Native Americans, Latinos, Asians in illegal shop work, people farm, So we have to. So the roots are deep, and it's not just anything. We have to respond on multitudinal levels, and this is a Herculean effort, and a lot is on the line, and it's not just. And as far as Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania, like just as a state, like what it was, because Philadelphia is abused sweat labor force that Pennsylvania can get away with and then talk all types of crap. So I'm saying we have to look at those dimensions, those realities, and white America are a huge part of it, and I'm actually want to use the word cracker America. And definitely, like they've come out across the country and on all levels and stuff like that. So poor whites, or whites without a knowledge base, are used as the tool or the cudgel against people of color when part of this oppression or scapegoating. The same old trope. Oh, they're doing this to themselves and they're doing that to themselves. In 1999, when the wall came up in Palestine and Israel, Palestinians were the most educated Middle Eastern people. By 2010, Palestinians, I remember thinking how they were responding to the division that came up, and they was responding to the oppression just the same way that black people respond to the oppression. So it's scapegoating, guns is scapegoating. So it's a massive con, and billionaires are playing a huge game and manipulating who gets what and how we direct that. And we really need to look on all the fronts.
Gotcha. Well, thanks, Val, for giving us a call. We appreciate that. And appreciate what you're trying to say. I think we have to sometimes watch the language a little bit on that in terms of how we're referring to folk. But I appreciate everything that you were sharing with us. And I think that there's a lot of truth in all of that. All right. Did you want to respond to that, or we can just want to move on?
Well, I'll just quickly say, I mean, I think it is a divide and conquer tactic that keeps us pointing the finger and doing the blame game instead of coming together. I mean, like I said before, the number one victims of gun violence are those white men of a certain age range. I think it's, I don't know the exact age range, but I think it's like middle age that are victims by suicide of gun violence. And so, like, why can't we join together and deal with the pain that kind of gun violence and gun deaths causes those communities, and see that we actually have a common humanity here. And I think there's lots of ways we can do that. But, it's like we have to be careful about getting caught up in the racialized system that we've been put in, because it allows us to see each other as separate from one another. And I understand we need to do that sometimes, because we have to point out the distinctions and how laws and systems treat us differently because of racial identity. But at the same time, we can't let that dehumanize us and keep us separate from each other as fellow human beings.
Gotcha. I think this is what we want to do. I see Woody and Barbara out there, but I think we probably want to go and take our top of the hour break. And then when we get back, we have Woody and Barbara that we'll be engaging with, and let folk know that the phone lines are open, 215-634-8065. And we also, I mean, some other things we need to talk about, because we want to talk about voting rights, a little bit about what's happening with that across the state, which actually has implications for all this as well, in terms of us being able to have a say in our own collective destiny. So you're listening to Solution on Words with Amadi Braxton. I keep saying words. I don't know why I'm doing that. I think I'm Nick Talaferro. You're listening to Solution on Word. Solutions on Word. Solutions on Word with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. We'll be right back.
So many times we say to ourselves, I need to make a difference. Well, your chance is here. Center in the Park is holding a virtual volunteer event Friday, August 6, 2021 from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Advocate for those who can't, support those who can, and ensure all long-term care residents live with dignity and respect. Register for this Ombudsman event at info@centerinthepark.org. We all feel better when we do something that matters and when we do something with purpose.
Hi, this is Samantha from Leo's Apparel on Germantown and Lehigh Ave. Open from 9:30 to 5:30, Monday through Saturday. We have the hottest selection of boys' dress suits and casual sportswear for boys, sizes 2T to 20. Men, let me tell you, we got in a large shipment of straws from Stetson. We have new linen and dress suits. Biggest selection of Stacy Adams shoes. Get an extra WURD 10% discount.
Tune in Saturday at 3 p.m. for Let's Talk Safety with Fire Commissioner Adam Teal. Learn about fire prevention and emergency preparedness, and join the conversation.
This is WURD Radio,
96.1 FM
and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media. You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back
to Solutions. We can do it together in unison. Welcome back to Solutions on WURD with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster, who are, singing duets.
You don't want to hear me sing. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
So look, let's go to Woody in Winfield. Woody?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Ms. Braxton?
Doing well, thank you.
I like the program, Solutions and Faster. Very interesting conversation, but this is bigger than just a conversation. The gentleman that talked to you, I think from Maine, was he a fellow pastor?
No.
No? Okay. Well, the only reason I said that is because the guy, Michael, once he came and made comments, because I have white customers as well as black customers, that come through my doors. And dealing with them, I call it barbershop talk, working on the head and in the head. So conversations and dialogue go on. I miss one of my great buddies, Mr. Cody Anderson, who used to be in here. And I think about him a lot, because we would get in great conversations with a lot of the people that come through the doors here. So I just wanted to say to the gentleman, Michael, one of the things I think he's missing, and you can't help it, when you bring white and black together, because of America and how divided it has been from the beginning, there's so much ignorance in each culture that there's a lot of work to do in conversation and dialogue to break that ignorance up. And the ignorance is what divides most people. But it's all started by this country we call America. 400 years of chattel slavery doesn't go away overnight as it relates to the children of those former chattel slaves. With that thought in mind, a lot of other cultures can't even imagine what something like that is. So I put us in a separate place altogether. We are the non-immigrants. Everybody else in America is an immigrant. We're the non-immigrants of this nation. And with being that, we have to understand what we have went through. Now, one of the first things they removed with the chattel slaves was teaching them to read or giving them a book or trying to educate them. That same spirit is in our environment today. Most of our inner city schools are failing. When you talk about kids and everybody can seem to figure it out, this goes back to slavery again. This is the educational system and structure here, by design, has caused most of the problems that we're seeing. Now, if you feel inferior because you can't read right, maybe spell or count, you know, you already have a feeling of inferiority. After that feeling now, you start making money on the streets. You got all the money. Now that you got to get your tool, if you're out there doing things you're not supposed to be doing, you get a gun. That's supposed to be the street tool. So now you have that, and you feel like a big shot. Now you're better and bigger than you were. Everything these young kids see on the news about themselves, particularly black males, is always negative. So our news media is so much against us. The country, other cultures in their ignorance don't even understand when they make certain statements. And I understand why you had to cut him off there for a while, because I wasn't going to say anything, but that got to me as well. But the point is, in ignorance, you can't really blame them. It's the structure of the environment in which we live. It's called America. We got to work on that, and it should start with our public schools, inner city, all over this nation, particularly in large cities like Philadelphia, are failing us, and it's psychological damage going on with the media, the schools, everything else that makes you feel less than. It's not good, and the outcome can't be good with all we're going through.
Thanks, Woody. Appreciate that. I mean, let me just say, it's not the schools that are failing. The whole American project has failed, period. It's just a failure. As a country, as an institution, let me just say, it's not necessarily a failure in some eyesights, right? Because what has happened in this country was ultimately what was designed in the beginning, was that white men landowners would actually have power and possess power and control, and women, folk of color, in particular African Americans, indigenous folk, and then Latinx people and Asian Pacific Islanders and others would not have power, and then basically be left to fend the scraps for themselves. So in that sense, I guess it's been a success, but in my estimation, I think the estimation of a lot of people, the concepts, the ideas of what America is has failed. So the fact that the public school system is failing our children is not by accident. It's by intentional design about how we can defund education, how we can defund supporting black and brown children being successful. And, we do things like try to create voucher programs so people can go, quote unquote, to private schools that they can't afford because the vouchers don't even cover enough of the tuition for private schools, or that they can go to charter schools. And then when you really look at it, there are a handful of charter schools that are really wonderful institutions. And then the rest of them are doing no better than any of the public schools that they're supposedly replacing in the first place. So, but people are making money off of those charter schools, right? They're using a corporate business model that is actually failing our young folk, but they're continuing to make money all the way around on trying to educate our children and really leaving them behind. So, I hear a lot of what you're saying. I affirm the challenges of education, but I think it's not just the educational failure, it's an overall failure of American society to take care of all of its citizens, including those that have melanin in their skin, to be able to address their issues and their concerns very well.
And we can't forget that the poor whites who were sent to war to defend slavery for the wealthy plantation owners,
right,
and were bamboozled into believing that the black enslaved people were their enemy, when actually they had more in common.
Absolutely, still do.
Enslaved than they did with the wealthy plantation owners. I mean, that is the seed of this the divide and conquer that I was talking about before.
Sure.
And so, people's views have been distorted about each other's humanity from the beginning of this country. Let's go to Barbara in West Philly.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this discussion, and thank you for the drop the mic comment before the break when you talked about secession, and I just think we should take a deep dive in that when you can, because I did just a quick Google and found something from the Washington Post that said there were 4 things that you had to do. And one thing that I just wanted to mention, it said it would have to be a constitutional amendment I believe. But it was real quick, so I didn't really get into it. But I mean, I just think take a deep dive into that. Please consider that. And also, I want to say that the schools, my understanding, and this was recently, even after 2020, when 2020 ended, I believe I heard that from one of the council people, I think, and I don't want to mention a name because I'm not exactly sure if I have this right, that there is still asbestos in some of the schools. There's still heating problems. There for this winter, there'll still be heating problems. For this summer, if there's summer schools, that there will be heat problems in the classrooms. I mean, no air conditioning and stuff. I mean, I really want to know, where does that stand now after having a whole year to get it all straight, in my opinion. And that's only part of the school thing. I mean, how are children being prepared for the jobs of the future? And I'm really not hearing that enough. One other thing that I wanted to mention too was that the summer job program isn't beginning until August, if I have that right. And so we have to go through the month of July, and if that's correct, I'm not sure, but I thought that was what I heard, that they wouldn't start until August. And how many, if you could get some information on that, or have someone on to talk about that, I would appreciate it. I just wanted to mention a person who I heard on a program that Nick had, and it was Salim Holbrook, and I think he was the Philadelphia executive director for the Abolitionist Law Center, and he mentioned focused deterrent programs and how effective. And if we could sort of take from the information that y'all have, if you could really talk about these focused deterrent programs. And he had mentioned, I think, Reuben Jones, who before, I don't think he's in the same, he's not with whatever his focused deterrent program was, but I think he has another nonprofit that he's leading. But I mean, the one that he did have, is that still going on? I mean, what is happening with these focused deterrent focused deterrent programs? And the last thing I wanted to say, too, is on many sources, we get the number of people who were killed overnight. I have never heard, and maybe I've missed it, about the number of gun runners that were arrested overnight, the number of people who were arrested for crimes. And I think we should also do that, have that same information given at the time when we talk about the number of shootings, period, the number of murders, the number of all of those things. So, and thank you for the program, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barbara. I think one of the challenges is, and I don't know enough about Mr. Jones's program. I know that there was a pilot project done in Philadelphia on focused deterrence several years ago, but it didn't seem like it had that much funding, and I would like to hear more. Maybe we can get Mr. Jones on or somebody else who has experience with that particular program.
Right.
I assume that it may be being continued in particular sections of the city. I mean, I think part of what we know about the way gun violence happens is it's very focused in terms of it often involves people who are in the same social network. It often is neighborhood based. So there could be different focused deterrence programs happening in different parts of the city where you're focusing on different, specific groups of people that are, associated with a particular geographic area or social network. Part of what's so disheartening is, I think the DA Krasner a few weeks ago in another case where there were multiple shootings, a multiple shootings incident, and he talked about how a lot of the violence now, it's not related to drug activity or criminal drug activity. It's really and like turf stuff that we maybe used to think of street gun violence in urban areas in the past. It's really, social media beefs and insults and retaliatory shootings based on somebody being insulted on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's just like so petty on a certain level. And so it's just so disheartening to see that something like that could result in someone losing their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why don't we go to our next caller? Let's reach out to Cliff in Connecticut. Cliff, welcome to Solutions on Word.
Hey, Freeman, thanks for taking my call, particularly to you, Pastor Royster, for your activism. I really appreciate that. So much respect to you. And I've been critical of pastors, but you and that arrest, that protest, that's activism. And that's what I appreciate coming from our black leadership, particularly our clergy. We need more of that. But let me also say this, that I look forward to this program that's coming up, I think, with Pastor Nick regarding white evangelicals and white clergy dealing with the issue of racism, because it's needed. Not only is racism a legal issue, but also a moral issue, in my opinion. And if white pastors and evangelical Christians, preachers and Catholic priests don't talk about this, you know what I mean? And then some of us don't even want to talk about it in the pulpit. And not you, Pastor, because I know you're on the front line, but there are some of our brothers, our pastors that are afraid to talk about racism in America. So it needs to be addressed. And so in closing, I want to ask you this. Back in slavery, back in the day, we had Ben Mardisi and also Nat Turner. They were preachers. What made them different from the other black preachers, in your opinion? And I'll hang up and listen to your response. Do you understand my question?
I do understand your question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, I think that's the question that we have to ask a lot of preachers today, not just black preachers, but preachers all the way across the spectrum of those that are coming in particular from marginalized and oppressed communities, about why they aren't standing up and speaking truth to power and addressing that. I think that there are political environments. I'm going to just tell you about a conversation I had earlier today, literally about this. I was talking with somebody earlier today who was mentioning the fact that, there's all this money coming down, around gun violence programs and things like that. And they were like, hey, faith-based institutions need to go grab this money. And, I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Because part of that doesn't allow us to be able to speak truth in very forthright ways if the people that you're attacking are the ones that are writing your checks. And so, I have some issues. You might create some other organizations that are able to do that and funnel that, but we need to be able to continue to speak prophetic power without fear of retaliation for resources that were coming into our locales or our organizations to be able to support our ongoing work. And, I was reminded, somebody in the room was mentioning back in the 1970s, there was a lot of money that flooded in faith communities after, during the early 70s when affirmative action was going into place and after civil rights movement. But what part of it was buying silence. And then George W. Bush did this too when he created the faith-based office out of the White House, and then a lot of municipalities began to do the same thing, and they were funneling, the really sad thing about it is they were funneling tiny grants, but buying people's silence for grants that really were not significant one way or the other. And they were also, in the places where they actually were giving large grants, they also gave large grants to institutions that never managed that level of money before. And if anybody's ever dealt with the federal government or state government in terms of their auditing procedures and following their practices, it's a nightmare to try to maintain. And a lot of institutions got in trouble with that. And so, I think, part of it is folk are afraid. They're afraid of political connections. I don't know how many preachers I have talked with that have told me, oh, I got the phone number to the mayor. I got the phone number to the state senator. I got the phone number to the state rep. I got the phone number to the council person. And they believe that proximity is power. But if those people are not going to do what you want them to do and it's what's in the best interest of your community, then your having their number is absolutely worthless. It is irrelevant that you have their phone number because they are not doing anything in the best interest of the community. And I think, so we get caught up in proximity of power. We get caught up in materialism and driving big fancy cars and, showing up and having the latest bling on our hands and, because we're trying to show level of prosperity in our communities. And what ultimately is happening is that we have internalized white supremacist behavior in terms of what success looks like, in terms of what we deem, our faith talking about. And at least from the Christian perspective, a whole lot of that stuff ain't got nothing to do with Jesus. So from my estimation, that's Dwayne Royster. It does not speak for everybody else, but a lot of that stuff is going on. And I think the other challenge is, too, is that when we have a lot of our folk are going to evangelical seminaries and getting their education, and they're being indoctrinated in a certain way to look at the text and a certain way to believe, which actually at its root is also white supremacist. They're not necessarily going to get the higher levels of education that then force them to create their own theologies and to have an understanding about reading the word in a different way and being able to look at it, as Dr. Jeremiah Wright talked about, having a hermeneutic of suspicion. You should be reading and looking and asking the question, who's benefiting, who's not benefiting, how's that impact your people, how's it impact marginalized folk? Folk are not asking those questions because they're like, we're going to read the word as it stands. And it's not helpful. They're
literalists.
Yeah, they're literalists, and it's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous to be a literalist. I am not a literalist by any means. I take the Bible seriously, but I do not take it literally because you got to read through a whole bunch of stuff to really understand oftentimes what it's trying to say. So, and I will take my seriousness about biblical study over anybody's literal reading any day of the week and say that mine is more accurate. So, I think that there's a lot that happens in all of this that we have to decolonize. So there's been a movement even in Christian circles about what they refer to as decolonizing the church, that we have to understand that even the structures that have been set up in the church and sometimes even in the black church are mimicking white supremacist models, and that we need to go back, reevaluate that, and ask ourselves the question, is this really what we're supposed to be doing? Is this what God would have us to do? So thanks for asking that question, Cliff, and I could go on for this for probably the next hour, but I don't want to do that because I know we have other callers on the line, and we have folk that are like, this is not supposed to be a religious show, and so I'm not trying to make it a religious show, although I think faith, actually kind of weaves through in everything that we do, whether, as we often talk about, people of faith and moral courage, right? Because we have moral ethical systems that exist out there today that are not religious systems, but actually are ideological systems that people have deep moral understandings and underpinnings, and we want to respect those systems as they come into contact with us in the work that those folk are doing at the same time.
Well, look, we're up on our break. Time is flying by. We've had some good conversations with our callers. We appreciate all of you. But on the other side of the break, we'll go to Olanyan in Nicetown. So hold on the line, Olanyan. We'll be with you right after this break. You're listening to Solutions on WURD.
WURD Radio Digital Tip of the Month with Stephanie Humphrey. Brought to you by Comcast.
Email phishing scams are nothing new, but they get more convincing and sophisticated every day. In the past, you'd get fake emails that seemed to come from your bank or credit card company, but now you could also see messages that appear to come from Amazon, PayPal, or Netflix as well. So how can you spot a scam? Look for misspellings or grammar errors in the email message. Most phishing scams try to scare you with a sense of urgency in the message that tries to get you to click on a link or provide account information. And one of the biggest telltale signs of a phishing scam is the email address of the sender. Pay close attention to where the email came from. A scam email address is usually totally unrelated to the company it's claiming to represent. Remember, a legitimate company will never send an email asking you for sensitive personal information, so if you're unsure, call the company directly and never click any links or open any attachments in the message. Stay safe online, stay tuned to WURD for more tips, and stay connected with us at wordradio.com.
Tune in Saturdays from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. to hear Empire Capital and Consulting founder Mark Palmer's show titled Black Money, Black Power. This show centers around black money and how black power is derived from money. Tune in every Saturday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Black Money, Black Power, hosted by Mark Palmer.
Thinking about retirement? Make sure a My Social Security account is a part of your plan. A My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal earnings history and benefit status. You can find out if you're eligible to receive benefits, compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates, view spousal benefit estimates, and more. Plan for your future. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions with Amadi Braxton and Bishop Dwayne Royster. And I know that Olaniyan from Nicetown has been holding. Let's go to Olaniyan.
Good readings.
Greetings.
Now, the Reverend, is he a morning person or afternoon? I usually hear him in the morning. I didn't know that he's one now.
He does a daily early morning as well.
Interesting. I picked up the phone and not didn't pick up the phone. I picked up the radio and turned it on near 6 o'clock, and there was a man on, and he sounds like a black man. What he said was something that I've heard before more than once from some black people, and I really disagree. He said that we are the only non-immigrants in America. Come on. Before 1492, there were Native Americans here. Unless you consider them to be not Asian or Native American or black, they were here. So they didn't immigrate. Yes, we were forced here, which is an immigration to me. But I just wanted to add in that fact that we're not the only. Okay, thank you much.
I think you're 100% correct, and I think he just stepped away from the mic for a second. But I think maybe he was talking about when we think about immigrants, people lump African Americans into that category. But I think you're right to point out, and I don't think he meant to exclude Indigenous Americans, First Nations people, as not counting them. But thank you for pointing that out. I agree 100%. All right, let's go to Dwayne in Southwest.
I want to talk about these a lot of these pastors. I don't want to put money in the black banks because I know I had left my past. I told my pastor about putting money in the black banks. He didn't want to do that.
Why didn't he want to do it?
I didn't hear you.
Did he give you a reason for not wanting to do it?
No, he didn't give me a reason. Then when I started questioning him, he didn't like that. He got the sergeant on put me out. Because I was doing a lot of questioning this pastor, and he didn't like that. So he told me, he told me, I had to leave. So I started questioning him. I questioned these pastors. This pastor right here. I told him, I said, how come you not putting money in the black banks? No, I'm leaving it right in the bank I got now. And then got a little smart about it, so I left that church. I'm not going to call the name, but it's a mega church. It's one of the big churches. So I just left. I don't bother on churches no more. Because a lot of these pastors, not all of them, you got some pastors that are doing a good job, but a lot of these pastors are already about money.
I think you're right. Bishop, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I missed part of the conversation. But as in all things, you got good folk, you got bad folk, and even in the church, unfortunately, it's not all that it can be. As John Wesley would say, we have not arrived. We are always arriving. We are not perfect, but we are moving on to perfection, and I think we're still a work in progress.
Well, I think there's also, isn't there this big movement in the evangelical world towards this prosperity ministry, this prosperity gospel approach?
Yeah, I think it's starting to get blown. It's getting blown to smithereens during the COVID crisis, during the foreclosure crisis. Others are beginning to look and say this is not really anything more than a multi-level marketing plan, and not really about the gospel, because the gospel can stand in any season. It's not just in seasons of prosperity that it makes sense. It makes sense in every season. So I do think that there are more and more people now that are beginning to say, hey, this isn't all that it's cracked up to be, and we need to really evaluate where we've gone and where we've been.
I think it is really still strong, though, in African countries and in Philippines.
Oh, absolutely.
Places like that.
Yeah.
I did, if any listeners out there have seen that show, the Black Lady Sketch Show, I don't know if it's on HBO or Showtime.
Yeah, it's on HBO. I've seen that, yes.
And they had a sketch about, with a black pastor called Pastor Venmo.
Pastor Venmo.
Yeah. Like and he was definitely all about collecting money. Anyway, let's go to our next caller. We have Willie in Winfield.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I've been listening to the show, and it's been very informative. Imani Braxton, what you were talking about earlier in the criminal justice diaspora or diagram would be creating a whole new cottage industry of workers that would do outreach to bring about a decrease in violence and decrease in gun violence and decrease the poverty in the city of Philadelphia. The problem with that is that the city is as poor as it is, and the city council, state reps and state senators would have to do a heavy lift to create a whole new group of civil servants that would, as we have social workers, we have probation, we have parole, those are already in place. And to create a whole new industry, while it would be necessary and needed and bring about less violence and decrease in poverty, it would also bring about a whole new group of city workers. While the faith-based community and community groups are going to be tackling this, the money that is there coming from the White House is only going to be there for 2 or 3 years. And while I totally agree that it needs to be, as you pointed out in your earlier comments, needs to be a multi-pronged approach to focus on gun violence, to focus on poverty, to focus on young people, young men who have not matured and have not gotten the ability to, or have not received the ability or have the ability to make up their own minds, to have impulse control. That whole aspect of it would be a heavy lift for the city of Philadelphia. And while it's necessary and needy, it's not going to happen unless the city voters decide that this is exactly what we need to have a multi-pronged approach to violence and violence makers, and to look at it from a multidiscipline approach, as you pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with your aspect. I agree with your total thinking there, but it would be it would encompass a whole lot of money that the city does not have, and the city won't have after 2 or 3 years of this administration when that 50 million or $50 billion runs out? Where is it going to come from to pay for this new city workforce that would need to go into the communities, need to go into the schools, need to go into the hospitals, as you pointed out? Where would that money come from?
I think that we live in the richest country in the nation. I mean, in the world, richest nation in the world. I don't think there's a shortage of money. I actually think that it's just what is the money being used for, right? There's currently how much of a surplus, Bishop, in the state budget? 7 billion?
10 billion. It was
10 billion?
Mm-hmm.
There's a surplus. They don't want to use that money to fund the schools fully. That's why Bishop was getting arrested a couple weeks ago. They're not putting enough money. I think that there was a recent set aside of $30 million for violence prevention work.
Yeah, in the city, it's not that much.
But it really requires a $100 million investment. We allow big mega corporations like Comcast to not pay their fair share of taxes, and other corporate entities not to pay their fair share of taxes. The University of Pennsylvania, my alma mater, does not pay any tax. And there's a movement within Penn as well as outside to have a PILOTS, which is payment in lieu of taxes, that would require the university to actually pay taxes, even though it's a nonprofit institution. It is an incredibly wealthy institution, and that nonprofit designation is, a benefit for them. But it's they should be contributing for all of the land that they've utilized, and for all of the city support that they get as an institution. They should be paying some kind of tax. There's a lot of resources that need to be redistributed to those who have been underdeveloped and exploited. There are developers who are not paying any real estate tax because of a 10-year tax abatement. There's all sorts of sources of revenue for the kinds of comprehensive approach that I was describing before. So I think we can find the money.
I think we can find the money, too, if we were to tax the top 100 companies in the United States and the top 100 companies in Pennsylvania, and they actually pay taxes. I think we'd have plenty of money to be able to afford all these positions and more. It'd be nice to see, Amazon pay some money, Berkshire Hathaway pay some money, Microsoft, Google, Apple to pay significant amounts of taxes in the United States, and those that are headquartered here in the state of Pennsylvania. It'd be nice to see, not that I agree with them, how about the fracking industry pay taxes instead of getting tax breaks all the time?
Right.
You're going to be here polluting our water and polluting our air. How about you just pay some taxes? Not that I'm advocating that. I'm just saying that there's money out there, and I think part of what we've been sold, which is a part of white supremacy, is a scarcity model, right? If you have, then there's not going to be enough for me. And the reality is that there's people that are hoarding resources. The 100 richest people in the world have made more money in the last year than the rest of the 90% of the world, some crazy number like that. And they've actually seen their wealth triple while other people have continued to struggle. So, hey, hit them up. Let's do a wealth transfer. Let's transfer their wealth to the people that they have been exploiting the whole time that we've been in the COVID-19, virus.
And I'll just, here's a perfect example. This just came into my email inbox, and people may have heard this story. I'm just hearing it. So South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is going to use a donation from a Republican mega donor in Tennessee, not even in South Dakota, in Tennessee, to fund a deployment of National Guard troops from South Dakota to the southern border of the U.S. in Texas, right? So a single billionaire from one state is funding military troops from another state to further militarize the U.S.-Mexico border. Basically paying for a little mercenary force from one state to go down and do what that billionaire ideologically thinks is appropriate in terms of guarding our border against migrants from Mexico. What if that person was just actually required to pay taxes on that money? And then the taxpayers as a collective get to decide how that money is used, right?
Absolutely.
We're the voters. We get to decide how that money is used. Instead, we have billionaires influencing our, business of our states, influencing what happens with our schools, influencing what happens with all sorts of policies, voting, all of the voting laws that are being passed around in Republican-controlled legislatures around the country. That is being funded by billionaire interests.
That's right.
Who want to suppress votes, who want to suppress democracy, and want to suppress the voices of certain communities so that they can continue to live in a United States where they don't have to pay taxes, where they don't have to be regulated for the industries that they're polluting industries that they run, like the fossil fuel industries. That's what they want. So they need to be taxed.
Absolutely. And heavily. It's not going to hurt them. Tax them heavily.
How much money does one person need? Is my question.
It's a really good question.
Look, let's go to AC in West Philly.
Yeah. You have my deepest condolences, Sister Amani, for the death of your loved one and all the people that have suffered from violence. I've had that happen to 5 of my family members, so I know the feeling. And also, Reverend Royster, I haven't had time to congratulate you on the birth of your grandchild. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now, what I would like to bring is some solutions. I think one of the solutions, people always talk about on the back end, like all-night basketball, the recreation, and all of that. But on the front end, we're going to have to solve these murders. We have to, and we have to make people accountable for the low clearance rate. We have a clearance rate of around 15% in Philadelphia. That means you have an 85% chance of getting away with a murder. So if we don't put any pressure and we just say, because we don't want to say certain things about the police commissioner or the other people in the department, no, they're failing us too. And we may not want to say it, but it's the truth and the facts bear it out. The cities that have a high clearance rate, they have a low murder rate. And that's just a fact. You can look it up in any city. Look up New York. Look up on the website. It says New York announces city crime statistics for June the 21st. They do it every month. New York is a city of 6.6 million people, a larger majority of African Americans and Hispanics in Philadelphia. They have up to this year 181 murders. We have 271, 90 more murders for a city where people are congested. They still have old-fashioned high-rises in some parts of New York. And with no way should we be close to their murder rate. We have more police per 100 people or per 1,000 in New York. There's no way we should be near them. We are 90 more. That means we're averaging 15 murders per month more. They had 39 murders for the month of June. One is too many. We had 65. So here were some of my solutions. And then I told you about a site a long time ago, Sister Amani, Philly Unsolved Murders. You're in the reference.
Right. I remember you saying that.
Right. When I first started watching that site in March of 2020, there was 345 unsolved murders. Now, I don't know their methodology and tracking. Now, the last time I looked at it, on the 6th of this month, it was 1,393. That's an increase of 1,048. When I first started looking at it, the solved cases that they cleared or closed was 35. Now it's 121. So that means we increased 1,048 and we solved 121. That record is abysmal.
It is.
Somebody has to be responsible for that and we have to bring some pressure to bear. But let me go to my solution. It's a system that you can look at. Some people use it in New Jersey and all over the country. It's called the shot spotter system. That system, the Darrell Clark and a couple of other people came over to Camden, New Jersey to see it. They have it in Camden. If a shot goes off, it pinpoints you right to the exact address on this system. So we need to get a shot spotter system. We need to hire retired homicide detectives from all over the country. And we need to use facial recognition and iris recognition. I don't care if you have a mask all the way up to your eyes. If it's not covering your eyes, your iris has a unique print. And if we can employ that, even if we have to go overseas to get the contract, because I don't know if you remember, Apple refused to unlock a phone for a shooter in California. The United States government got a contract with an Israeli tech company, and they unlocked his phone. We have to think outside the box, but if we never, and people rarely talk about solving the murders, and I understand I'm all for funding all the little leagues and education and all of that, but if we don't make the shooters feel, we had one brother who killed his mother, then he in February, and then went down to Delaware and killed 2 people, and then came up to Philadelphia and killed the lady at Dunkin' Donuts.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine if we would have caught him when they knew he was the prime suspect for killing his mom? That would be 4 more families that didn't suffer. So I just pray that I thought about solutions, and I'm offering some solutions, and I want everybody who's listening to check my facts. Philly unsolved murders, and New York PD announces citywide crime statistics for June. They do it every month.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, AC. Appreciate you. We have to go to our break now, but we'll continue some of the issues you raised on the other side of this break. You are listening to Solutions on WURD with Amadi Braxton and Dwayne Royster. We'll be right back.
Support small, black, and brown-owned businesses by joining the Diverse Procurement Collaborative, a community of business leaders committed to supplier diversity. Get engaged at chamberphl.com. Hey, WURD family, did you hear? It's official. The Colorectal Cancer Alliance just announced the new age for colon cancer screenings has been officially lowered to age 45 for everyone. If you are 45 or older, it's time to get screened. Go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner to register for your free at-home screening test. Did you know colon cancer is largely preventable with on-time screening? And there's a 90% survival rate when caught early. African Americans are 20% more likely to get colon cancer and about 40% more likely to die from it than most other groups. So for the next 3 months, you can go to wordradio.com and click on the Go to Know banner for your free at-home screening test. A screening navigator will contact you to ask a few questions and help you get screened. It's that simple. Again, just go to wordradio.com, click on the Go to Know banner, and fill out the form to request your free at-home screening test. Go to Know today. Tune in this Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. for the Islam Today show with a perspective on moral guidance and Islamic principles and values.
You're listening to Solutions exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Welcome back to Solutions. This is Amadi Braxton along with Bishop Dwayne Royster.
Hello.
Great conversation tonight. Appreciate the last call from AC right before the break, talking about solutions, specific technology and strategies in policing to actually solve murder cases, which is a really, of course, important aspect of this problem, is actually increasing the rate of clearing these cases. So let's see what our other callers think. We have Phil from North Philly.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Imani and Bishop Royster. It's a long day for you, brother. You got up early this morning.
Yes, sir.
Anyway,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm on the solution side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a strategist, and the problem we having is that we have a power on the inside of us. Even the books all said to know thyself. Because if we knew the information we supposed to be knowing, we can handle the earthly or the physical things. So spiritually, we got to get in alignment. We don't even know about the 613 laws Moses got from our Heavenly Father. All we talk about is 10. But if you look at the 613 laws, it's the same laws that set up any government on this planet. He talks about marriage, everything, animals, and the 613 laws. And we sitting up here underneath these people trying to get our psychic together so we can get away when the power, we have to know ourselves. And it's in the book. You know, when our Father come back, he is not coming back for Hebrew Israelites. He's not coming back for African American Indians. He's coming back for his people. He made a covenant. He made a promise to us. So we got power inside us because we the chosen one. That's why we call him Abba, because he adopted us. Now, the story we getting on the outside of us is their story. And I don't know how long y'all going to talk about it, because that's all we do on WURD kind of lately. Look what they did. Look over here. Look at the. Okay, fine. Where's the action at? We human beings made by God. We not Americans anymore. We got to go back home. And it's in the book. Do what it says in the book. Get the Kanat. Get the old religion, the original religion that we was all born with. It's right there. When you hear God talking in the Bible and he says, "Hear, O Israel," you read right over that. But God is he's calling you. One of the people in the 12 tribes of his chosen people. Hear, O Israel, we are the original Israel, the children, and we spread it throughout this planet, and somebody got a hold of the rules and regulations and twist them up a little bit. Now we have to go inside and get the power. We got to get the Holy Ghost.
We're going to run out of time. We've got a couple of callers there. Is there a very specific point you want to make?
We have to go inside. The knowledge is in the Bible, but we don't read it because we busy praising. So we have to go inside. We got to get scientific about our religion. And with that, thank you for listening to my rant, but I know I'm on point because you're on point.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, let me just say, I hear you on that, the law of Moses that we can find in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and the Hebrew Bible, or what we often commonly call the Old Testament. But I also want to say that, at least from a Christian perspective, there are two laws that sum up all those things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And I think if we can practice the love your neighbor as yourself and then loving God, we could actually really transform the world. The narrow way of faith is not about law or legality. It's actually about love. And if we learn to manifest not just philia, which is the brotherly and sisterly love, but we actually learn to manifest agape, which is we can actually ultimately see the God in each other and respect the God in each other, we could actually transform the world that way. So I appreciate what you were saying, Phil, and got you on that. And we should probably bounce over to Maurice from North Philly.
Hey, how's everyone?
Good, how are you?
I'd like to answer the question and make two statements. The question is, when they put the census out, correct? Everyone had to fill the census out. Is that correct?
Well, they're supposed to. Not everybody does, but they're supposed to.
Well, they're supposed to. Now, we know money, the census, the brothers and sisters from the inner cities, when they go to prison, they get counted as the census. Who fill their census out?
Who fills their census out? I'm sure the government does that. I mean, the prison system does.
Okay. That's illegal, isn't it?
I don't know, because they're incarcerated, so I don't really know fully what all the laws are according to that.
You can't put no taxes on a state inmate. or defendant. Can no taxes apply to a state inmate? That's illegal. My thing is, I'm listening to everybody talk. Have you read 2035 plan? If you read 2035 plan, that's a comprehensive plan. It's in detail. It's spelled out what's going to happen. No one yet in black America, particularly Philadelphia, has written anything on the black economic comprehension agenda. Yeah, we can talk about if certain sectors owe us money, if certain sectors played a part in slavery. That's one aspect of it. We cannot continue to count other people's money and expect us to give them some. We have to come down to the table, put a comprehensive plan and see how we're going to create our own dollar. How we're going to create a comprehensive program in that will take care of our dollar, that will sustain longevity with our dollar. Until we do that, one, we don't know what America is. One, we don't know what America is about. And number two, we cannot close the racial wealth gap. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that, Maurice. I mean, let me just say to you real quick, so there's like all these plans that are out there, strategic plans that are done by the state, city governments, municipal governments, school districts, and everything. Honestly, the people need to write their own plan that's generated by them and what they want and their expectations that they have from the government. I think far too often we let the government get away with writing things for us and not always recognizing that the people that are influencing them are not operating in our best interest, right? The lobbyists, people that are putting money in the PACs, political action committee accounts of these various politicians, things of that nature, people that are influencing them, outside of this. Interesting fact the other day, there was a report that came out that Mitch McConnell, who is the Senate Majority Leader for the United States government, is worth about $35 million. He and his wife are worth $35 million. Mitch McConnell has served in the U.S. government for 40-something years. The maximum his salary has ever been is $250,000 a year. So how does a guy who spends, 40 years in government service, never making, $250,000 is a lot of money, but it doesn't get you to $35 million. So where is he making this money from? And I think, it's those kind of things that we need to ask questions about, those kind of things that we should be challenging in this moment, why we need to write our own plans, because there are folk that helped him get that $35 million that I'm sure he's making legislative decisions that are benefiting them and not benefiting you and I. So deeply appreciate that. And those are really good points you're making. Thank you for that.
Well, his wife, Mitch McConnell's wife, is Elaine Chao, whose family has runs I believe, a Chinese shipping company. And she was the, Department of Transportation?
Yes, Secretary of Transportation, yep.
Under Trump, which puts her into proximity of a lot of influence on who gets what kinds of contracts. And, it's all about peddling influence.
That's right.
Unfortunately. And the fact that the majority of members of Congress are millionaires is a serious problem, because when they're doing their lawmaking, their point of reference is people who make millions of dollars and have wealth. Their point of reference is not the average person.
They're not hanging out with you and me.
No, the class interests that they're representing in their governing is something other than us.
They're not hanging out at your house or my house.
No.
Their kids are not going to school with our kids.
No.
Or nephews and nieces or cousins or anything. So they have no contact with real everyday people.
No, not as far as I can see.
Yeah, that's the problem right there.
That's
why we got to change the laws about getting elected, about election finance. We need to change all that so we can actually elect real people, everyday people, into these offices to make decisions.
That's part of what is in the For the People Act.
Yes.
And that's why they don't want to pass that. They don't want that because it totally revamps our democratic process and tries to take the money out of it.
Yeah, we didn't even get to voting tonight, really, the way we needed to. But maybe we should say that for next week.
We also didn't get to Haiti because, the president of Haiti was assassinated this week. And there's a lot going on around that. So we'll talk about that next week.
Well, let me just say this before we get off the air. We need to take a lesson from South Africa. So the former president of South Africa is currently in jail. And I think the Department of Justice needs to get some courage and do what they did in South Africa and throw our former president in jail. I'll just leave it at that. We can talk about that more later on.
Okay.
I'm just saying, he's in jail for 15 months for contempt of court. How many times has Trump avoided court, contempt of court, tried to tie people up? If he can go to jail for 15 months, Donald Trump can go to jail for 15 months. I'm just saying.
All right. You're dropping another provocative bombshell as we are getting ready to leave.
Absolutely.
So we'll pick that up next week.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ms. Braxton, for everything that you do and for helping to lead the show tonight. Thank you, Troy, for doing everything you could to scare everybody in the beginning of the show, but then doing a great job engineering and making sure that all of our callers are able to get through. We want to thank everybody that called in today, that were part of this very impassioned and difficult conversation on this evening, and the people that called in with solutions. We actually need the solutions from the people. That's what's really going to transform our society, and so we really appreciate that. Thank you to everybody that listened to us on the air, that listened to us through the app, that listened to us through the internet, everybody that checked us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, people that checked us out on Alexa. Hey, Alexa, turn on WURD Radio. Now, we want you to stay tuned now for the MB McKee Show, but do us a favor, everybody. Do yourself a favor. Do your children, your grandchildren, your nephews, nieces, the kids down the block that drive you crazy, but you smile when you see them anyway. Go out, change the damn world, because if you don't, nobody else will. Peace.